I checked the tool bucket one more time before I climbed into the truck. Klein strippers, wire nuts, crimpers, the backup headlamp with the fresh batteries, everything where it needed to be. The spool of 12 gauge in the bed was tied down tight with 2 ratchet straps, not one. That was good. I didn't need it rolling around on me halfway up the highway. The yard in Haines looked exactly how I'd left it 2 hours ago. Chain link, gravel, a couple of pole trailers. Nobody had moved since October. The office light was on. Stanley's truck still parked crooked near the gate. I was running on nothing. That's not me being dramatic. 2 weeks I'd been sleeping in the cab between calls. Maybe 4 hours at a time if I was lucky, and the last 3 days had been worse than that. There was a cot in the break room back at the yard, but every time I thought about using it, dispatch would call another outage and I'd just keep going. Easier that way. Less start-stop. My hands were doing that thing where they felt swollen inside my gloves even though they weren't. Just tired. Everything was tired. But the next call was already on the radio. A fault somewhere up near Chilkat Pass, and I figured I'd grab it before someone else had to drive out. Made sense. I was already geared up. Stanley came out of the office when I fired up the engine. He walked over and knocked on my window, so I rolled it down. Cold air came in. "Be quick," he said. "Yeah. I mean it, Caleb. Get up there. Fix it. Get back before dark." I nodded. Stanley had this look he got when he was about to give me the safety speech, and I really didn't want to hear it. "Tourists keep sliding off up past mile 30, he said. 3 this week. Dot's got sand down, but it's not helping much." "Okay. You hear me?" "I hear you." He stepped back from the truck. In and out. "Don't mess around." I rolled the window up and pulled out of the yard. Stanley was still standing there in my side mirror when I turned onto the main road, hands in his pockets, breath making clouds. He worried too much. That was his whole personality, probably. Worry and radio static. The Haines Highway runs north out of town, and it's pretty straightforward for the first 15 miles or so. Decent pavement, some curves, nothing bad. I'd driven it maybe 200 times. More than that. I didn't really count anymore. I passed the welcome sign, the closed-up fruit stand, the turnoff for Chilkat Lake. A plow had been through recently. You could tell by the berms on either side, still clean-edged and white. It wouldn't last. The wind was already kicking up. The radio crackled. Dispatch confirming the fault location, asking for my ETA. I told them 45 minutes, maybe 50. The guy on the other end said something about conditions being stable, and I said, yeah, sure, and that was it. I didn't tune Stanley out on purpose. That's not quite right. I heard him. I just didn't let it sit. He always said the same stuff. Be careful. Don't stay out too long. Tourists this, weather that. It was white noise. I'd been doing this job for 6 years, and I hadn't slid off the road yet, so I figured I had a pretty good handle on it. The fault was up near mile 38, right below the pass. Probably a branch or ice buildup on the line. Happens all the time in winter. I'd get up there, clear it, make sure the connection was solid, and head back. 2 hours tops. I kept the heater on low. Too much, and I'd start nodding off. My thermos was empty. I'd finished the coffee around 6 in the morning and hadn't refilled it. Stupid, but I'd been in a hurry. The road started climbing after mile 20. The trees got thicker on both sides, spruce and hemlock pressing in close, and the wind started hitting the truck in gusts. Not terrible yet, just noticeable. I passed a green SUV going the other direction, probably headed back to town. It had a rental sticker on the bumper. Stanley's tourist thing popped into my head for a second, but I let it go. Not my problem. Mile 30 came up on the marker and the wind got mean. That's the only word for it. It wasn't just blowing anymore, it was coming in sideways and bringing the snow with it. The flakes were small and hard, the kind that don't melt when they hit the windshield. They just build up on the wipers until you're smearing more than you're clearing. I slowed down a little. Not much. Just enough to keep the tires under me. The road edges started disappearing. That happens when the snow comes horizontal. The white of the shoulder just bleeds into the white of the ditch, and you're guessing where the pavement ends. I stuck to the center line and kept my speed steady. Easier to feel the road that way. Mile 32, 33. The pass was close now. I could feel the elevation in my ears. The radio crackled again. Some highway bulletin about conditions being manageable on the northern routes. Scattered snow, normal winter advisories. I looked out at the windshield. Visibility maybe 30 feet, traction fading every time I touched the brakes. Manageable. Right. It made me feel more alone, hearing that. I don't know why. It wasn't like I expected them to say it was a whiteout, but the gap between what they were calling it and what I was seeing just sat wrong. I turned the radio down. Mile 35. The wind hit the truck hard enough to push me half a foot toward the shoulder. I corrected and kept going. I wasn't worried yet. I'd driven in worse. Not often, but enough times to know what it felt like. You just had to stay smooth. No sudden moves. Don't slam the brakes. Don't crank the wheel. Let the truck do its thing and keep your hands loose. My eyes were dry. I blinked a few times, but it didn't help much. I needed sleep. Real sleep, not 20-minute cab naps with my boots still on. After this call, I'd go back and use the cot. Maybe. Mile 37. The trees thinned out a little on the right side, and I could see the valley dropping away into nothing. Just white. The wind was constant now, no more gusts. Just a solid push from the west. I rounded a bend and saw the tree. It was a spruce, maybe 20 feet tall, lying across the right lane at an angle. The trunk was thick enough that I couldn't just bump over it. Branches spread out into both lanes, the green-black needles already collecting snow. I slowed down. Not all the way. Just enough to get a look. The left lane was mostly clear. Mostly. There were some smaller branches reaching into it, but nothing I couldn't get past if I threaded it right. The shoulder on the left was narrow, maybe 3 feet before the ditch, and with the snow, I couldn't see where the edge actually was. I should have stopped. Gotten out, cleared the branches by hand or called it in and waited for DOT to handle it. I didn't. I eased the truck to the left and started threading past. I slowed to maybe 10 miles an hour and eased left, aiming for the gap between the tree branches and the ditch. The spruce was thick enough I couldn't just push through. Had to thread it. The truck bed cleared the trunk fine. Front tires rolled past the heavier branches without catching. I was thinking I'd made the right call not stopping when I felt the wheel go loose under my hands. Black ice. The truck slid left. Not fast, just steady. The kind of slide where you know what's coming and can't do anything about it. I turned into it. Didn't brake. That's what you're supposed to do. The truck kept going sideways anyway. The passenger side tapped the snowbank. Soft at first, then harder as the rear end swung around. I felt the whole frame settle at an angle, nose still on pavement, back half buried in the berm. That was it. Stuck. I sat there for a second with my foot off the gas, hands still on the wheel. The engine was running, wipers going. Everything looked fine except I was diagonal across the right lane with my tailgate probably halfway into the left. I put it in reverse and gave it some throttle. The tires spun, caught. The truck rocked backward maybe 6 inches. Then the engine made a sound I didn't like. A bog. Heavy and wet. The way it sounds when something floods the intake. I let off the gas. The engine kept running, but rough now. Then the dash lit up. Check engine light, battery light, oil pressure, all of them. I turned the key off, waited 3 seconds, turned it back. The starter cranked, slower than it should have. Once, twice. On the third turn it caught, and the engine turned over, but that bog was still there underneath. I turned it off again. Didn't want to flood it worse or kill the battery completely. I'd need the battery if I wanted the hazards running, and I probably did given where the truck was sitting. I hit the hazard button. The click started. 4-way flashers going. Then I pulled my radio off my belt and called Stanley. He picked up after 2 clicks. "Yeah." "It's Caleb. I'm stuck." Pause on his end. I heard him exhale through his nose. "Where?" "Mile 37, maybe 38. There's a tree down across the road. I tried to get around it and hit ice." "You off the road?" "Halfway. Rear end's in the berm. Front's still on pavement, but I'm blocking most of the right lane." "Engine running?" "Was. Now it's bogging. Might have taken in snow through the intake. I shut it down before it got worse." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear him thinking, or maybe just annoyed. Probably both. "Hazards on?" "Yeah." "Good. Don't try starting it again. You need a tow." I figured. "You calling someone, or should I?" "I'll call. Gonna be a while though. Probably 2 hours minimum in this weather. Maybe more if they're already out on another job." 2 hours sitting in a dead truck at mile 37. I looked at the windshield. Snow piling on the wipers faster than they could clear it. "Cab's gonna get cold," I said. "Yeah." Stanley didn't sound worried, just matter of fact. "Walk up to the DOT station. It's maybe a mile past you. Mile 39 or 40. You'll see the turnoff on the right. Tell them you're stuck and waiting on a tow. They've got heat. Maybe they'll send a plow down to push you out and save us the call." I didn't love the idea of leaving the truck here, blocking the lane, hazards going, battery draining. But Stanley was right about the cold. Cab was already losing warmth. I could feel it. "All right," I said. "Call me when you get there." "Yeah." Stanley clicked off. I sat there another few seconds. Didn't move yet. Just looked at the dash, the lights still flashing their warnings even with the engine off. Battery had maybe an hour on the flashers before it died completely. Maybe less in the cold. I reached back and grabbed my headlamp off the passenger seat. Checked the strap. Batteries were fresh. I'd swapped them 2 days ago. Gloves were already on. I pulled my hood up and zipped my coat all the way. Then I grabbed my voltage tester off the dash. Didn't need it. Wasn't going to use it walking up the highway. But I grabbed it anyway. That's me. Can't leave the truck without something. I looked at the windshield one more time before I opened the door. That's when I saw it. A frost line. Thin. Pale. On the inside of the glass. Shaped like a handprint. Not smudged. Not messy. Clean edges. 5 fingers. A palm. Pressed flat against the windshield from the inside, right above the dash on the passenger side. I stared at it. The cab was cold, but not that cold. Not cold enough to frost the inside of the glass. And I hadn't touched the windshield. Hadn't leaned forward. Hadn't put my hand there. No one had. I reached out slow and held my own hand up next to it. Same size, maybe a little smaller. The frost was real. I could see the crystals. I pulled my hand back. It bugged me. Not a lot. Just enough that I kept looking at it, trying to figure out when it could have formed. If I'd done something earlier and forgotten. If condensation had pooled weird. Nothing made sense. I sat there another 5 seconds. Then I pushed the door open and stepped out into the storm anyway. Stanley said 1 mile, 20 minutes probably. I started walking. The wind came from everywhere at once, not from a direction. Just present. The headlamp beam died about 6 feet out, swallowed completely by horizontal snow. I kept my head down and followed the edge where I figured pavement met shoulder. Couldn't see the line. Just had to guess based on the texture under my boots. I counted my steps for a while. Got to 212 before I lost track and had to start over. Then I lost it again at 90-something. After that, I stopped counting. The snow poles were supposed to mark the road edge every 100 feet or so. Reflective orange bands at the top. I swept my headlamp left to right, hunting for one. Found it eventually. A thin post about 4 feet tall, half buried with the orange stripe catching just enough light to register. I aimed for the next one. Took longer than it should have. The storm kept filling in the gaps, turning everything into the same white static. I thought I saw taillights ahead. 2 red dots, faint but steady. I picked up my pace a little, angling toward them. Figured maybe someone else had pulled over. Maybe Dati already out here clearing the tree. The lights didn't move. I got closer. 10 feet. Then 5. Then I was standing right next to a reflective marker nailed to a post, the red stripe bouncing my headlamp back at me. That bugged me a little. I kept walking. It happened again maybe 5 minutes later. Same thing. Red glow ahead, steady and low. I adjusted my path toward it, slower this time because I already knew what it was. Still looked like taillights until I got close enough to prove myself wrong. Just another marker doing its job. My hands were cold inside my gloves. Not numb yet. Just that deep ache that starts in the knuckles and works its way up. I shoved them in my pockets and kept the headlamp aimed low. The road curved slightly. I could feel the grade change under my boots. Everything else was invisible, no trees, no sky, just snow and the small circle of ground I could actually see. I checked my watch. 14 minutes since I left the truck. Should have been close by now. I stopped and turned a full circle, sweeping the headlamp around. Nothing but white. No building. No lights. No road, really. Just the idea of one. I found another snow pole and kept going. The wind pushed at my back for a few steps, then swung around and hit me from the side. My boot caught on something, maybe a ridge of ice, and I stumbled forward 2 steps before catching myself. Didn't fall. Close enough. I thought about the frost handprint on the windshield. Couldn't help it. The edges had been too clean. I'd tried to write it off as condensation or something I'd touched earlier and forgotten, but I hadn't touched it. I knew that. And the cab wasn't cold enough for frost. Not inside. Didn't matter now. I was out here and the truck was back there and I needed to get to the DOT station. 22 minutes since I left. Maybe 23. Then I saw it. Actual light this time. Not a reflection. A porch light, dim and yellow, barely cutting through the snow. I aimed for it and the building started to take shape. Low and wide. Metal siding. A garage bay on the left, door pulled down. A smaller entry door on the right with the light above it. I walked faster. My boots hit gravel under the snow, then a cleared patch near the door. Someone had shoveled recently. Not well, but enough. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Unlocked. The door swung in and I stepped through, pushing it shut behind me. The warmth hit me first, then the smell. Diesel and old coffee and something else. Grease, maybe. Or just the scent of a building that's been closed up all winter with the same air cycling through the vents. I pulled my hood back and blinked against the light. Overhead fluorescence. Bright enough to hurt after the last half hour in the dark. The room was small. Concrete floor, cinder block walls painted that industrial beige that's supposed to hide dirt but just makes everything look tired. A folding table in the center with 2 chairs. A mini fridge in the corner humming quietly. A coffee maker on a metal shelf, the carafe half full and probably cold. A bulletin board on the far wall with safety posters and a duty roster and a missing person flyer. I didn't look at closely. A man sat at the table, mid-40s maybe, heavy build under an insulated jacket, dark hair, thick mustache, face weathered in that way that comes from years outside. He had a handheld radio on the table in front of him and a candy bar, half eaten. Snickers. The wrapper was folded back neatly. He looked up when I came in. Didn't stand. Just watched me with the kind of expression that doesn't commit to anything yet. "Hey," I said. He nodded once. His eyes went to my chest. The company patch. Alaska Power and Telephone. "You're the lineman," he said. Not a question. "Yeah." "Kevin Morris." He gestured at the other chair. "You're the one stuck at mile 37. I stopped pulling my gloves off. "How'd you know?" Stanley called it in maybe 10 minutes ago. Said you'd be walking up. Kevin leaned back in his chair. It creaked under him. Tao's gonna be a while. He tell you how long? 2 hours minimum, probably more. I finished with the gloves and shoved them in my pocket, then moved to the table. My hands were red and stiff. I held them under my armpits for a second, then just let them hang. Kevin pushed the other chair out with his boot. Sit. I sat. The chair was cold metal. My legs ached in that way they do when you stop moving after pushing through something. Storm's getting worse, Kevin said. He said it flat, no urgency, just a fact. Yeah. Had a plow go down that stretch earlier. Route you just walked. He picked up the candy bar, looked at it, set it back down. Never checked back in. I looked at him. When? Couple hours ago, maybe 3. He shrugged. Happens sometimes. Radio goes quiet, guy finishes his run, heads back to yard without calling it in. Bad habit, but it happens. You try raising him? Kevin tapped the handheld radio on the table. Couple times, nothing but static. I rubbed my hands together. Feeling was starting to come back. Pins and needles in the fingertips. You got a landline here? No. That settled into the room and just sat there. I stood up and walked to the bulletin board, scanning it without really focusing. Safety guidelines for operating a snowplow, a chart showing route assignments, a phone tree with numbers I couldn't call because there was no phone. The missing person flyer was pinned in the center, a woman's face, smiling, 30s maybe. The header said, "Missing" in bold red letters. Ruby Warren, last seen January 8th near Haines. I looked away. Can I try the radio? I asked. Kevin didn't move. Go ahead. I walked back to the table and picked up the handheld. Standard Doughty issue. I keyed the mic. This is Caleb Skinner, Alaska Power and Telephone, calling from DOT Maintenance Station Mile 40. Anybody copy? Static. Loud and empty. I tried again. Stanley, you there? This is Caleb. More static. Then a clicking sound. Not Morse code. Just interference. Random. I set the radio down. Kevin was watching me. Told you. I sat back down. The isolation wasn't abstract anymore. It was concrete. Me and Kevin in a cinderblock room at mile 40 with no phone and a radio that didn't work and a tow truck that wouldn't arrive for 2 hours minimum. The storm outside erasing everything. A plow that hadn't checked in. I was stuck here. Kevin picked up his candy bar again and took a bite. Chewed slowly. Swallowed. Could be worse, he said. I didn't ask how. Kevin set the radio down and looked at it for a second. Then he said, Antenna's been weird since last week. I waited. Gets interference, he said. Random stuff. Sometimes nothing at all. Made sense. Weather could do that. Ice built up on the mast, wind knocking the mount loose. I'd seen worse. Kevin leaned back in his chair. It creaked. He picked up the Snickers wrapper, folded it smaller, set it down again. His hands were big, rough, the kind you get from years outside. Saw something yesterday, he said. His tone shifted, lighter, forced. Down past mile 34. I didn't say anything. Dead moose, Kevin said. Standing up in the ditch. I blinked. Just standing there, he continued, upright. Like it froze mid-step. He tried to smile, didn't quite land. Legs locked, head up, whole thing solid. That happened sometimes. Animals died in the cold, froze fast enough that rigor kept them in position. Wasn't common, but it wasn't impossible either. Weird sight, Kevin added. He wasn't laughing, wasn't really amused. Just saying it. I nodded once. Didn't know what else to do with that. Kevin looked at the radio again. Picked it up. Set it back down. I turned in my chair and looked at the bulletin board. I'd seen it when I came in, but I hadn't really looked. Safety posters mostly. OSHA stuff about frostbite stages, wind chill charts, proper lifting techniques, a duty roster with names I didn't recognize and routes labeled by mile marker, a phone tree with numbers that probably didn't work anymore, and the missing persons flyer. I'd noticed it before. Ruby Warren, woman from Whitehorse. Last seen January 8th near Haines. The text was clear, printed clean, but the photo area had been scratched out. Not torn, not covered. Scratched. Deep. Someone had gone at it with something sharp. A key maybe, or a knife. The paper was gouged all the way through in places, little curls of it hanging loose where the cuts went deepest. You could still see the edge of her hair, dark against the white background, part of her shoulder, but the face was gone. I stared at it longer than I meant to. "You want a cot?" Kevin said behind me. I turned back. He was standing now, hands in his pockets. "Got one in the back," he said. "Nothing fancy, but it's flat." I thought about my truck. The hazard's still clicking, battery draining. 2 hours minimum for the tow, probably more. No point walking back out there. "Yeah," I said. "Appreciate it." Kevin nodded, started to say something else. Then the heater clicked off. Just like that. 1 second it was humming in the background. Low, steady. The kind of white noise you stop hearing after a while. Next second it was gone. The lights stayed on. Fluorescence still buzzing overhead. Mini fridge still running in the corner. But the air went sharp. Instant. I felt it on my face first, then my hands. I looked at Kevin. He was frowning, not panicked, just annoyed. "Runs on a separate breaker," he said, mostly to himself. He pulled his hands out of his pockets and walked toward the door on the left side of the room. "Garage bay," I figured. I stood up. Kevin glanced back. "Electrical's my thing," I said. He shrugged. Didn't argue. Pushed the door open and went through. I followed because standing there felt wrong. I do electrical work for a living. Troubleshooting a breaker panel isn't complicated, and I wasn't about to sit in a room that was getting colder by the second while someone else poked at circuits. The garage bay was bigger than I expected. High ceiling, concrete floor stained dark in patches, one plow truck parked on the left. Orange paint faded and chipped, blade detached and propped against the wall. Smelled like diesel and old oil. Colder in here than the front room. No insulation I could see. The breaker panel was mounted on the far wall. Metal box, gray. Standard residential size, which seemed small for a building like this, but that's how it goes sometimes. Budget installs. The door was hanging open. Not just unlatched. Hanging. Like someone had left it that way. Kevin walked up to it and stopped. I came up beside him. The breaker labels were smeared. Not faded. Smeared. Like someone had taken a wet hand and dragged it down the whole column. The ink was gray pulp, letters unreadable. I leaned closer. A few breakers were flipped down. Kevin reached out and flipped them back up. Solid clicks. Everything seated right. The heater didn't come back on. I pulled my voltage tester out of my pocket. Don't know why I'd grabbed it from the truck earlier. Habit, maybe. I opened the panel door wider and checked the main. Hot, good connection. Traced down the bus. Everything looked fine. "Should be working," I said. Kevin didn't answer. I looked up. He was staring at the ceiling, not at the panel, at the conduit running along the rafters. I followed his line of sight. The conduit was metal, half-inch EMT, standard. Ran from the panel up the wall and across the ceiling toward the back corner where I assumed the heater unit sat. But about 6 feet out from the panel there was a groove. Shallow, spiraled, like something had wrapped around the conduit and twisted. Not crushed, not dented, just grooved. The metal was scored in a clean line that coiled maybe 3 full turns around the pipe before stopping. I stared at it. Couldn't have been done during install. No reason to. And it wasn't corrosion. Too clean. Too deliberate. "What the hell?" I said. Quiet. Kevin didn't say anything. Then something hit the garage door. A bang. Heavy. Solid. Not wind. Wind doesn't hit like that. Wind pushes. Rattles. This was a single impact. Loud enough that I felt it in my chest. I turned toward the door. Big roll-up. Aluminum. Closed tight. Kevin turned too. We stood there. Didn't move. The sound didn't come again. The bang came again. Lower this time. Not at the top of the door where the first one hit. This one landed maybe 3 feet up from the concrete. A single heavy thud that rattled the aluminum and then stopped. I didn't move. Kevin didn't either. We just stood there in the garage bay with the open breaker panel behind us and the cold settling in and that sound sitting in my chest. It wasn't wind. Wind doesn't knock twice. Wind doesn't pick a spot and hit it clean like that. I'd been telling myself it was probably a branch, maybe a chunk of ice sliding off the roof, something the storm threw. But that second bang, it felt deliberate, like something was checking the door, testing it. That's when it shifted for me, when it stopped being a storm problem and became something else. Kevin's voice came out low. "Don't move." I wasn't planning on it. He took a step back toward the door we'd come through, the one that led back to the main room. He didn't turn around, just reached behind him and pushed it open with his boot, then slid through and let it close without taking his eyes off the garage door. I followed him. My hands were cold again. The voltage tester was still in my right hand. I didn't remember keeping hold of it, but there it was. Kevin crossed to a tall metal cabinet against the wall near the mini fridge. Emergency supplies, probably. The kind of thing DOT keeps in every station. Road flares, first aid kit, maybe some blankets. He pulled the door open and moved a box of something aside, then reached in and came out with a flare gun. Bright orange plastic grip, short barrel. He checked it, flipped it open, confirmed the flare was loaded, and snapped it shut again. I looked down at the voltage tester in my hand. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my utility knife. The small one I kept clipped inside my coat. Blade maybe 2.5 inches when it was open. I didn't open it yet, just held it. Kevin glanced at me, then at the knife, then back at the door to the garage. He didn't say anything about it. What was there to say? Another bang, this one from the side wall. Not the garage door anymore, the wall to the left, the one that faced the road. Same heavy single impact, solid. Then nothing. I counted 5 seconds in my head. 6, 7. Then it hit the roof. Not a bang this time, a scrape. Long and dragging like something heavy being pulled across the metal panels up there. It started above the garage and moved toward the center of the building, right over where we were standing. Snow shook loose from the rafters inside the bay. I could hear it falling on the other side of the door, little hisses as it hit the concrete. The scrape kept going, slow, steady, all the way across to the far side of the roof. Then it stopped. Kevin's jaw was tight. He still had the flare gun in his right hand, down at his side. His other hand went to his radio on his belt, but he didn't lift it, just touched it. Like he was reminding himself it was there, even though we both knew it wasn't going to do anything. "Could be the plow," he said. I didn't answer that. The plow driver who hadn't checked in for 3 hours. Sure. Kevin moved to the window. There was a small one set into the bay door. Just a square of reinforced glass, maybe 8 inches across, the kind you use to check before you open the door. He pulled a flashlight from his belt and clicked it on, then leaned in close and pressed the beam against the glass. I stayed back, watched him. The flashlight beam cut through the window and disappeared into the white outside. Kevin angled it down, then up, sweeping it slow. Then he stopped. I saw his shoulders go still. He didn't pull back from the glass, just held the light there. "What?" I said. He didn't answer right away. The beam stayed fixed. Then he shifted it slightly to the left, and I saw his breath catch. I stepped closer. Not all the way to the window, just close enough to see past his shoulder. The flashlight beam was hitting something outside. Not snow. Not the door. Something pressed against the glass from the other side. It moved. Not with the wind. Against it. The wind was blowing left to right. I could see the snow streaking horizontal in the beam. But this thing slid the other way. Slow. Dragging across the glass like it was being pulled by something I couldn't see. It looked like hair. Long strands. Dark, maybe. Hard to tell in the white and the flashlight glare. But it moved wrong. Moved like it had weight but no body attached. Just hair sliding across the window on its own. Kevin pulled back, clicked the flashlight off. His face was blank. Not scared exactly. Just shut down. I took a step backward and my boot clipped something. A metal bucket I hadn't seen sitting on the floor near the shelf. It tipped and hit the concrete with a sharp clang that rang out way too loud in the small room. The roof went silent. No wind, no scraping, nothing. I held still. Kevin did too. We both stood there listening to nothing. My heart was doing something stupid in my chest. The kind of thing that happens when your brain catches up to what your body already figured out. That something was up there. That it had heard me. I don't know how long we waited. 30 seconds maybe. A minute. The roof stayed quiet. The wind came back eventually. I could hear it again, muffled through the walls. But whatever had been moving up there wasn't moving anymore. Kevin set the flare gun down on the table. Not like he was putting it away. Just setting it where he could grab it fast. "We need the generator," he said. I looked at him. "Heat's out," he said. "Radio's garbage. Generator might fix both. At least the heat. Where's the generator?" "Shed out back. 50 feet, maybe less. Out back." Outside. I didn't say anything. Kevin picked up the flare gun again. Turned it over in his hands. "I'll go," he said. "You stay here. Keep the door locked." I shook my head. "I'll go." Kevin looked at me. "You don't know where it is. You can tell me. It's faster if I do it." "You've got the flare gun," I said. "If something comes through that door, I've got a voltage tester and a pocket knife. You stay. I'll get the generator running." He didn't argue right away, just stood there weighing it. Then he looked down at himself. The heavy insulated bibs, the thick coat, the boots built for standing around in the cold, not moving fast. He was dressed for a 12-hour shift in a heated station with maybe one trip outside to check equipment. Not for running. "Straight out the back door," he said. 30 feet, maybe 40. Little metal shed, painted green. You'll see it even in this. Locked. Padlock. Combinations 1212. I nodded. Generator's a Honda. Red pull start. Fuel should be full, but check the gauge first. Choke's on the left side. Pull it out, 3 pulls max, then push it back in once it catches. Got it. Kevin went to the shelf and grabbed something off the top. A wool scarf, dark blue, frayed at the ends. He tossed it to me. "Wrap that over your mouth. You don't want the wind in your lungs out there." I caught it. The wool smelled like diesel and old sweat. I wrapped it around my neck and pulled it up over my nose and mouth, tucking the ends into my coat. Kevin picked up his flashlight and handed it to me. Bigger than mine. Heavier. The beam would punch through the snow better than my headlamp. "Straight out and straight back," he said. "Don't stop. Don't look around. Get it running and get back inside." "Yeah." He walked to the back door, the one I hadn't been through yet, on the far side of the room past the bulletin board. He unlocked the deadbolt and put his hand on the knob, but didn't open it. He looked back at me. 30 seconds, he said. "You're not back in 2 minutes, I'm coming out." I nodded, pulled my hood up, tightened the drawstring. Kevin turned the knob and pushed the door open, and the storm came in. I stepped out into the storm, and Kevin shut the door behind me. The wind hit me straight on. I pulled the scarf tighter over my mouth and clicked on Kevin's flashlight. The beam cut maybe 10 feet through the snow before it turned into white static. I put my head down and walked. 30 to 40 feet, Kevin said. Straight out. I counted steps. Got to 12 before my boot hit something solid under the snow. I stopped and swept the flashlight down. A wooden pallet, half buried. I stepped over it and kept going. At 23 steps, I saw the shed. Small, green paint mostly faded to gray, metal siding with a single door facing me and a pitched roof collecting snow in a thick ridge along the peak. I got closer, and the flashlight beam hit the ground in front of the door. Tracks, not boot prints, long drag marks. 2 parallel grooves, maybe 8 inches apart, carved deep into the snow, like someone pulled a body by the shoulders and the heels dug in. The lines looped around the left side of the shed, disappeared behind it, then came back around the right and ended directly at the door. I stopped walking. The padlock was still there. Sort of. It hung from the hasp, but the shackle was twisted apart. Not cut. Not broken with bolt cutters. Twisted. The metal had been wrenched sideways until it deformed and separated, leaving a corkscrew shape where the curve used to be. I stood there for 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then I reached out and pulled the ruined lock free. It dropped into the snow. I pulled the door open. The shed was maybe 6 by 8 feet. Concrete floor, no windows. Smelled like gasoline and rust. The generator sat in the center, red Honda, just like Kevin said. I swept the flashlight over it and saw the pull cord hanging loose. I stepped closer and crouched down. The cord was snapped, frayed ends, not cut, like it got yanked too hard and gave up. I set the flashlight on the floor, angled so the beam stayed on the generator, and checked the recoil assembly. The cord had separated right at the handle. Couldn't fix that. Not here. Not without tools and a replacement cord I didn't have. That was it. No heat, no generator. I stood and turned to leave, and that's when I saw the glove. It was lying on the concrete near the back corner. A lineman's glove. Leather palm, insulated back, high cuff. Same brand I wore. Same style. It was holding a hand shape. The fingers were curved like someone had just pulled their hand out. The thumb stuck out at an angle. The whole thing looked full, like the hand was still inside. I stepped closer and crouched again. Reached out, nudged it with one finger. The glove collapsed flat. No hand. No weight. Just the shape it had been holding. And then nothing. I picked up the flashlight and backed toward the door. My chest felt tight. I didn't look at the glove again. Outside, I turned back toward the station and took 2 steps before I heard it. The back door, creaking. Kevin wasn't supposed to open it. I stopped and aimed the flashlight at the building. Couldn't see the door from this angle, just the corner of the wall and the snow piling against it. Then the wind dropped. Not a lull. Not a break in the gusts. It just stopped. Completely. Like someone hit mute on the whole storm. The snow kept falling, but it came straight down now. No horizontal movement, no sound. I turned in a slow circle, flashlight up, and that's when I heard the scrape. Wet, dragging, directly above me. I looked up. The thing was clinging to the roof edge of the shed. Pale, too long, joints bent wrong. Its limbs looked like branches, but they moved like muscle, bending and gripping the metal eave with fingers I couldn't count. Antler-like shapes sprouted from its back, or maybe its head. I couldn't tell which part was which, and they curved forward, dripping something dark that didn't freeze when it hit the snow. It didn't have a face, or it did, but I couldn't process it. My brain kept sliding off the details. I stepped back, raised the flashlight higher. The beam hit it full on and it recoiled, pulling one limb back and twisting its body sideways. Then it stopped and looked at me. I don't know how I knew it was looking, but it was. My other hand still held the voltage tester. I'd forgotten I was carrying it. I lifted it without thinking, just a reflex, and the screen lit up. The creature flinched, not away from the light, away from the tester. It pulled back another 6 inches, and one of the antler branches scraped against the metal roof, gouging a line through the snow. I stood there, voltage tester raised, and my brain finally caught up. The line fault, the tripping breaker, the heater circuit dying even though the connections tested good, the radio failing, the conduit with the spiral groove. It responds to current. It responds to disruption. I turned and ran. The station door was 15 feet away. I hit it with my shoulder, shoved it open and slammed it shut behind me, through the deadbolt. Stepped back. Kevin! He was standing near the table, flare gun in one hand, staring at me. It's outside, I said. On the shed, we need to... Something hit the door. Not a bang, a scrape, long and wet, dragging down from the top edge to the handle. Kevin raised the flare gun and stepped toward the door. Don't open it, I said. He didn't. He turned and aimed at the window instead. Pulled the trigger. The flare shot through the glass, punched a hole clean through and exploded into red light outside. The whole clearing lit up. Snow turned pink. I saw the shed, the drag marks, and a thin shape moving along the ground near the door. Too many limbs, pulling itself forward with a motion that wasn't walking. Then I saw the hallway, behind Kevin, past his shoulder. The hallway leading to the back room where the cot was. The light was still on, fluorescent, humming, and there was something in it, tall, thin, dripping. It stood at the far end where the hallway turned, and it was already moving, pulling itself along the wall with limbs that bent backward. Kevin, I said. He turned. The thing wrapped over his shoulders. I didn't see it move. It was just there, draped across him like a wet tarp, and then it yanked him backward. Kevin dropped the flare gun. It hit the concrete and skidded toward me. He didn't scream. He just made a choking sound and then he was gone. Pulled into the hallway, and the light went out. I didn't think. I ran to the garage bay, shoved the door open, and sprinted to the breaker panel. Slapped every main breaker down, 1, 2, 3, 4. The building went black. The pounding outside stopped. Just stopped. Like I'd unplugged the whole station. I stood there in the dark, breathing hard, the voltage tester still in my hand. I didn't search for Kevin. I didn't call his name. I turned and felt my way along the wall until I hit the front door, unlocked it by touch, and got outside. The storm noise rushed back. Wind, snow, the normal sound of weather. I started running, used the reflectors on the snow poles to navigate. Kept the flashlight aimed low, sweeping for the road edge. The voltage tester was in my other hand and the screen gave off a faint glow. Not much, just enough to see my gloves. Something scraped along the road edge to my left, keeping pace. I didn't look. I ran faster. At some point I saw the orange cones I'd passed on the way up, then the fallen spruce, then my truck, still diagonal across the lane, hazards dark. I grabbed the door handle, yanked it open, and threw myself into the cab, slammed the door, locked it, turned the key. The engine caught, just caught, clean, no bog, no hesitation. Like cutting the station's power released whatever had been choking it. I put it in reverse, backed out of the berm and swung onto the road. Shifted into drive, hit the gas. I drove south, watched the mirrors, watched the road, watched for headlights that never appeared and shapes that might cross in front of me. At mile 32, my phone buzzed. Service. I pulled it out, hands shaking, and called Stanley. He picked up on the second ring. "You at the station?" he said. "No." Where are you? Driving back, I said. The station's not safe. Don't send anyone there. Pause. What happened? Kevin's gone. The heater's out. The generator's dead. The whole place. I stopped. Didn't know how to finish that sentence. Caleb, what the hell are you talking about? The line issue, I said. It's not normal equipment failure. Another pause. Longer. You're not making sense. I know. Are you hurt? No. Then get back here. We'll talk when you're in. He hung up. I set the phone on the seat and kept driving. At mile 20, I started seeing lights, scattered. Then more of them. Then the glow of town against the clouds. I kept one hand near the voltage tester in my pocket, pulled it out twice to check the screen, just to see if it would light up on its own. If something had followed me, it didn't. But I kept checking anyway.